All right, we're good to go.
On calculations. Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Town Board Workshop meeting for September 21st, 2020, Town of Henrietta to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm back to normal.
See, because it doesn't say roll call on there, I actually jumped to the pledge, but realized, could you please call the roll?
Okay, you're keeping me guessing.
That's right.
Councilmember Barley,
Here.
Councilmember Stafford,
Here.
Councilmember Safranek,
Here.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here. I'm not quite Ron Jeremy, so I'm not going to read everything that's exactly on there as written, but you know, if it's not on there, arguably it doesn't exist. So we won't be reviewing minutes. Or let me rephrase that. We will be approving the minutes at the town board meeting instead of tonight. Is that correct, Becky?
That is correct. I just sent them out to you guys this morning, and I know you guys have jobs and things, so you may not have had a chance to read that. So you have a couple more days to look at those.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have one special use permit for Tesla Motors to update an automotive service center to include a vehicle showroom and sales area. I was called by a representative from the, I think it was like the New York State Automotive Dealer Association or something like that, pointing out that Tesla does not have a dealership license. So I don't know if our special use permit process does or doesn't take that into account. Kevin, do you know if they've submitted anything? Or Chris, have they submitted anything in that regards?
I don't have, what they're proposing is, you know, to have the cars there for test drives. They got the service already and they're having the showroom, and they're looking to have multiple vehicles, unlicensed vehicles, if you will, for test drives on the property. So, I mean, it meets all three S's for as far as the town's concerned. They're just not doing, you know, exchanging of monies, I guess, at that location. I
Okay.
figured I
specifically
decided they need to come in for the special use because they do have, they're not doing, I guess technically they're not doing the sales there,
Right.
but they're doing everything. They want to have the vehicles outside for show. I mean, they
What
had
are they
them lined
doing
up
as far as plates though? They don't have dealership plates, do they?
That I don't know. That question did not come up.
Okay.
I mean, they had the vehicles unplated, lined up along West Henrietta Road, you know, walks like a duck, looks like a duck kind of thing.
Yeah, I just don't know, Don, I don't know. Well, I haven't discussed this at all with you. The call came in late end of last week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know. That's, I guess I look at, you know, we often ask the question whether restaurants are getting their liquor license, but we never actually validate it before we give out a special use permit. So in that regards, if it's going to be a sales showroom, I think we should say that they should be licensed in the state of New York, you know, by the DMV, but it seems to me that we shouldn't be the ones who are. Was someone intend to share their screen?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I clicked on something. I apologize.
It says to update an automotive.
Becky,
service
could
center.
you kill the share screen sharing, please?
That's Chris.
Or who, I don't care who was doing it. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, John.
It says to update an automotive service center to include a showroom and a sales area.
Right.
So right now, it's just repair, auto repair?
In theory, but again, to Kevin's point, they've been taking people on test drives. They've had unplated vehicles out front. They've been doing a lot of activity that is part of a sale. In other words, from a zoning standpoint, would be considered a sale and showroom. So
Okay.
in that regards, we wanted them to come back and update their special use permit, because under their original one, that activity is not allowed. So if they want to do that activity, they need an updated special use permit, and it seems to me, B, they need to be properly licensed with the Department of Motor Vehicles, which is essentially, for lack of a better way to put it, above our pay grade, right? We should.
Well,
make it
it'd be
clear,
like,
but-
in a sense, I mean, you could condition it, but I think a corollary would be like, we need your DOH inspections for restaurants, right? You know, make sure that you're passing all those type of situation, which we're not obviously going to that level
Right,
to get to Department of Health reports on restaurants, for example. So,
right. That's my point is, whereas when someone comes in for that approval,
or liquor license, you know, stuff from the state on that.
right.
You could still condition, say you need to get all whatever state and agency permits you need and just leave it at that. In the event we find that they're operating illegally, we could pull their permit.
They did say that there are no more New York State licenses for Tesla to act as a dealership. So
Right.
they can't sell them there, but they can do everything but the actual transaction.
So the showroom would be a legal action? If they had somewhere where they showed the cars, that would be a legal action or not? Under our permit, if we were to conditionally approve it.
So the building would be allowed to have a showroom. Remember that permit, right, is more for what I'm allowed to do in that building. The issue is, are they licensed? So again, going back to using the restaurant example, we approve restaurants all the time. We never ask them before we give them approval, do you have your Department of Health certificate? Right? We never condition it upon them getting a Department of Health certificate. But obviously, if a restaurant is operating without one, they're going to get shut down by the Department of Health.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It just seems to me, and again, I don't know if it's different when we've done the other special use permits. I don't ever remember us asking for a dealership license. I don't ever remember us asking for anything. When I was speaking to the representative, I said that it seems to me that's not something we have direct jurisdiction over. And the person who was representing that automotive association said, no, it was his belief that the DMV would take care of it. That if in other words, irrespective, so we could give them the permit for the building to add the sales and showroom, but they can't actually sell. So in other words, it's not a zoning violation, it's a licensure violation.
It's a state
Right?
issue.
It's a state issue, not a town issue.
So could we condition this upon that happening?
We could say, you know, conditioned upon obtaining any state and other governmental approvals required. And then if it comes to our attention somewhere down the line, they don't have those approvals, we could pull the permit.
So from what I was told, that their intention is not to go forward with a state license. Just want to make sure, you know, if we put a condition on that they get that to sell.
No, that's not the condition. The condition is any licensing that's required.
Required, okay,
So if it's not required, then it's not required.
gotcha, okay.
Yeah, those. But yeah, I mean, if you're showing cars there and now, okay, I show a car, I test drive a car there, and then I got to call a 1-800 number to work out the deal. Are we saying, so we're saying that's not a car dealership? Well, I mean, it's kind of unfair to all the other car dealerships that have to pay all the time, but that is a state issue.
Right.
But it's still, I mean, I consider a car dealership. When I went over there a month ago and they had all the cars sitting out in front with the doors open and everything else showing it off, I was going to question, what are they doing?
Can't imagine the state doesn't know what's going on, especially
Right.
since we got a call about
Right.
it.
Again, the individual did say the DMV is aware of what's going on. And that I think what they're gonna do is pressure them to either shut down that portion of the operations, or transfer one of their licenses to here. Now, or Tesla's gonna try to get an additional license, I don't know.
Should definitely ask them
Or
about it and see what they have to say.
Okay. I just, like I said, my one thing on it is I want us to be consistent, because now with that said, I can't think of any other one that we've ever gotten a phone call saying, hey, these guys aren't properly licensed.
Right.
So.
So this call from their competition?
No, it was a call from, like I said, I don't know what the organization is actually called, but essentially it was the Association of Car Dealerships.
Okay.
It's the professional organization that represents the interests of car dealerships. And to Mike's point, they have to pay additional fees and stuff for that. It's not fair that somebody else comes along, is doing the selling without having to pay those same fees and having to follow the same rules that they have to. The theory behind the licensing of car dealerships is there were too many instances in the early days of the automobile business where unscrupulous dealers were hurting the public. And so then they went to the whole licensure approach. You can argue about whether that's still what it represents, but that was the basis behind it, and it's still in place as far as I know. That law hasn't changed.
Gotcha.
Okay.
One other thing, Steve, on that point, Mr. Martin was gracious enough to do some calculations on the parking requirements. And from what he had given me, I don't know if he's listening or not, that they were shy on what they were requesting to have 11 spaces for their show vehicles outdoors. Looking at the two other spaces that are there in that plaza, it looks like they'd be short by 6. They would only have 6 spaces allowed additional for their unlicensed vehicles for show and test drives.
So essentially they'd have to go get a variance?
Well, I mean, they're going to be allowed to have 6 by the calculations on, vehicles for the test drives. I believe it was, Chris is there, but I thought it was like 11. They were requesting 11.
Right. My point is to get to 11, they would need to get a variance to reduce their other required parking.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
They had on Saturday or Sunday, they had about a dozen unlicensed vehicles.
Right. That's what he's saying, that they're requesting 11.
Right.
The problem is if you take 11 of the spaces and dedicate them to inventory parking, that doesn't leave you enough customer parking to meet code. So in which case they would have to get a variance. They're about 5 spaces short. So they can either reduce the number of inventory spaces, or they can go get a variance to reduce the number of customer spaces. Okay, any other questions on that? Any comments from the blank wall? That's you, Mr. Martin. Okay. As I said, there's no presentations at the meeting. There will be 2 public hearings. The first one is an endangering tree. So we will need to have basically have the information as to why that tree was selected as considered an endangered tree. We'll get that from the town's arborist. Either the arborist or a designated representative will be at the meeting. We have heard that they're going to be there. We're still not 100% certain whether they're saying it's not our tree and doesn't need to, or that it doesn't need to come down. We're not exactly 100% certain which direction their appeal is going. Clerk's office, if you have any updates on that, I haven't been on email this afternoon, so.
No, that's a good summary of what we know.
Okay. And then the second one is the continuation from Riverton Parcel E to construct the proposed 120 unit multi-family community. I will note that I've been getting a lot of resident feedback. Very much opposed to this project, largely opposed to the multi-family portion of it. Again, with any approval, there's special permit approval. There's two portions. There is the special permit itself, and there is the seeker as to whether there are any significant adverse impacts. We had a meeting, I think it was on late Friday, with Passero Associates, who are their representative developers. I had given them a task to do the analysis of the Riverton PUD. I've been going through stacks and stacks of maps and minutes and basically 2 marathon public hearing minutes to try to find out what the requirements were for the PUD. Unfortunately, what we've yet to be able to find is the approved plan itself. Now, I can get a lot of it out of the minutes of the public hearing. Unfortunately, many times, so like our current town clerks, what they do is when there is a presentation, they include that presentation right in the minutes so people know what was being talked about at the public hearing. In 1972, that was not the practice. Now, with that said, the presentation was probably Kodak slides in a carousel slide projector. And so what we're basically looking at is here's effectively what I found. And I'll point out that the reason this is important is because this isn't the normal multifamily special use permit. Multifamily is an allowed use. They don't need a special use permit to build multifamily. The reason they have to get a special use permit is because their plans don't match the original plans for the development. And so in the Riverton PUD zone, if you put forth single family, multifamily, any plan that doesn't match what was originally proposed, it's supposed to come to the town board for a special use permit, and we are to judge it on whether it matches the original intent of the PUD. Now, with that said, I don't know that many boards, if any boards, have done this in the past. But it's what we are supposed to do by zoning, so we're doing it. I will note that will not only happen for Parcel E, it will also happen for Parcel A when they're ready with their plans. So here's some of what I found. The original PUD as proposed was going to be 1,300 acres. It was massive, all the way over to Telephone Road to the east and down to Martin Road in the south. It obviously was not approved at that size. The actual approved size was, I want to say it was more like, let me see if I can, I think I've got that number in it. It was like 529. 540 and 529. Yeah. Thought I'd written it down somewhere. Well, if I find it, I will do that. There was also, interestingly enough, supposed to be another 543 acres. So that's what I have inside the, or zoned in the PUD. So there was also supposed to be an additional 300 or 230 acres, excuse me, in Wheatland across the river. In fact, the bridge that you go over on 253, that's a new bridge that was built as part of this Riverton project. The old bridge, if you have ever been, if you go across just into Wheatland, there's a little path to the north side that takes you right down to the river, and there's like a canoe launch. That was the old bridge. So again, about, like I said, 543 acres out of the original 1,300 were planned. So when you looked at the original plans, there were multiple stages and multiple phases within each of those stages. And it was only the first 1.5 stages that got done. So the first major one was, I think it was called the Wildflower. And that was essentially everything from Scottsville, West Henrietta Road in the south up to the properties along Countess Drive in the north. The stuff further north was a future development, which obviously did get done and did get included. The stuff to south was multiple stages. Immediately south, there were 2 portions, an east and a west portion. The west portion of phase 2 did get created. The east portion did not. Now the east portion has since been developed as Shadow Ridge, but that was not part of the Riverton PUD. So one of the things that it called for is that there was supposed to be an open park area. So this is either land owned by the Riverton Community Association or owned by the town of 25%. Currently, we're at 35 to 40%. There's a couple discrepancies on here that they have to correct, so I don't have the hard numbers. They didn't realize parcel A, they thought parcel A was part of the town park, so they have to pull those out. In terms of the split, it was supposed to be a 50-50 split between single family and multifamily. Today, it is currently, this would, if we include these 100 units, it would be 51%, 49%. So in my opinion, that one's right on target. Obviously, from an open park area, they're above the target. The overall density was a maximum of 4.5 units per acre. We are, with this development, we're still at 4 units per acre. So again, strikes me that that is also within the parameters. A couple other things, there was a breakdown of housing type. Single family was supposed to be 35%. Again, it's currently 51.2%. Now, one of the things I'll note on that,
Based on unit count, Steve?
this is based on unit count, not acreage, but by unit count. I think everybody agrees that the single family is the least impactful in terms of traffic and other issues. So the fact that that one is over the amount originally intended, I don't think anybody has an issue with that. Townhouses were supposed to account for 18%. They're at 12.4% currently. Garden apartments, which they had a specific definition in the public hearing, which was basically if I step outside my front door, I'm surrounded by parkland. It's not really parkland necessarily, but open space, grass, trees, stuff like that. And so, you know, I went through and you can see the ones that they had designated in one of the early developments as the garden apartments. You can see the difference between those and what they called the mid-rise apartments, which was essentially the other apartment buildings. So one of the things they have made clear, if there's an internal hallway, it's considered the mid-rise apartments. It's considered an apartment building. If I step out of my door of the apartments and I'm surrounded by parking lots, I'm considered the apartment buildings. So again, I asked Passero to go through and create a GIS layer. We asked them to do it that way so we could look through it and validate that the numbers were correct. And they were. There's one that there's what looks to me like one garden apartment that they actually classified because it was on the same parcel with an apartment building. They classified it as apartment building. Really, that particular parcel should have been split in two. But where they get to that, garden apartments are 13.7%, so well under. That's where, of course, the excess all went to single family. And mid-rise apartments right now are below 12%, but if you do the ones that they're proposing to build, we would be at 12.6%.
It would only increase it by that small amount.
I have to get you, let me get you the count.
What
So
was the garden apartment number?
13.7.
13.7%,
But what were they supposed to be on
35.
35%?
It was supposed to be a lot. In fact, all the area that was Shadow Ridge was all garden apartments. That's basically where they went away. It was supposed to be the golf course. The front 9 of the golf course was going to come in through where that Shadow Ridge ended up. And they were going to be surrounded by garden apartments. So that's where the discrepancy in the numbers ended up.
What was the number currently for the mid-rise apartments?
12, well, I don't know currently. It's 12.6 with the proposed development. So of that, it's a total of, there are currently 77 apartment buildings and they're adding 120. So currently it's got to be below, I'd say probably about, would that be about 7% maybe?
You say there's 77 apartment buildings or apartment units?
Apartment units, sorry.
Okay, yep.
77 units in apartment buildings.
That's
And they're
always-
proposed adding
seems
120.
low, doesn't it?
Well, remember, the other apartments buildings are considered garden apartments.
Okay.
The ones that are surrounded on 3 to 4 sides by trees and grass and stuff like that.
And how many are
It's
those?
interestingly enough, they're easy to spot because for whatever reason, they have white roofs.
White roofs?
They have white roofs. It's a flat roof, I'm sure. And
So the garden apartments have white roofs?
so if you later want to take, or at any point, I can pass this around. So like I said, you can see them here. These ones here are
Oh, yeah.
they really stand out. So they're color coded. I'll pass this around so you can take a look at what they did. And again, that was based on specific instructions from me. So when I look at it, what I didn't do is what the current is. When I'm saying the current, it's current plus proposed. So to rectify that, I don't know that the one building that was misclassified will bring them below the 12%. But I think if they take one of their buildings, one of the other things that is clear on the garden apartments, they all have separate entrances. They don't have entrances in common,
Gotcha.
and that's what they're building.
How many units are they proposing to build in the garden variety?
They're not proposing any garden variety.
So they're at 13.7% right now.
Right. So my point being, if they wanted to if we were to hold them to that 12%, they would probably have to take the one building that's on the end and essentially push it away from the parking lots so that people came out into a park area. They could arguably do that. So when I look at it, they meet or can meet all the requirements of the special use permit. There's one other thing I asked them. In the original, there was a hard commitment by Riverton, the folks who were proposing Riverton, and you can see it in all the original plans. There is a parcel that was to be for a future school. The school does own the parcel there, but it's 9 acres. State law requires a minimum of 12 acres. So I asked them, their parcel surrounds it, and they weren't planning on developing that area. I asked them, would they donate that land to the school district so that that parcel then becomes over 12 acres. I haven't calculated. They offered up more than I'd originally asked for. They were going to go all the way to the stream. So they could be pushing the 15 acres, which is what the school likes. I did check with Andy Whitmore from the school district, and he said before I asked them to do this, would you guys be interested? They would be interested. So they would be able to put an elementary school right on Scottsville West Henrietta Road.
Was this acreage requirement something that changed over time?
That I suspect that's the case. I've not found any specifics as to why. It does look like the parcel shrank a little, but I don't know if that's because this was done in pre-GIS days. So it was hand drawn, and I don't know how accurate the original hand drawing was. It looks like there was one portion, but even then, I think it was about 10 acres, not 12. So I suspect that, yes, the code's changed over time. But again, if we're going to live up to that original commitment of a property to house a school, it needs to be 12 acres, and they'd be willing to make that happen.
The school, who would?
The developer.
Okay.
Now, I should be careful. They believe the developer would be able to, but my point is we could make that a condition of the special use permit. Would be to make that parcel whole so that the school could be there. And multiple times they called out that the school should be on Scottsville West Center Road. And again, it matches the parcel. The school currently owns the 9 acres.
Well, it makes sense to have a school right there in the Riverton.
I agree.
Again, consider if we have traffic issues, right?
Right. So no,
Putting
I
a school in
haven't
there.
touched on seeker yet.
Yeah.
Right. So seeker is a whole other story. But to my point, from the requirements of what we have to look at from a special use permit, does this match the original intent? Again, that area was originally supposed to be apartments. Now they were supposed to be garden apartments. But there were also a few mid-rises mixed in with the garden apartments and a few, all through Riverton, it was supposed to be a mix of apartments and single family dwelling right next to each other. And you see that all through the place. So like I said, that is not inconsistent with the original development. But again, I want to hold off seeker for the moment because seeker is where I do, and I warned the Passero that that's where I think they're going to see significant issues.
I just want to make sure I got the numbers right for the current.
Yep.
Is it 35% are single?
So 35, 18, 35, and 12. So single townhouses, garden, and apartment buildings. That's what the proposed was. The current is 51.2,
Oh.
12.4, 13.7, and 12.6. So I'm going to update. I've been doing these calculations. I will update this and send it around as to the requirements that, again, myself and Roland from engineering has been helping as well, because in addition to what I've been going through, he's been going through, there's 33 boxes of information on Riverton down in the archives. And again, we went through tons of maps. Unfortunately, most of the maps that were up in the engineering building or wing were predominantly as-built because that's what they care about, right? When I'm looking at, okay, I've got to compare and do the stuff, the plans are meaningless. That's what they were intending to do, right? As far as if I'm coming in and looking at, okay, I've got to figure out where I'm going to put my utilities. It's what was built, not what was planned. So most of what's in there was as-built for the sewers, as-built for the drainage, as-built for the grading, as-built for the roads. But that doesn't help in this particular exercise. So again, Roland's been searching the archives, although if the developer agrees to these numbers, I told him right now he can suspend that. It's at some point, I'll call it a rainy day activity. It would be nice to find those original plans so we can have those on record for anything future. Although to be honest, there's only, to my knowledge, 3 parcels, including this one, 3 parcels left that can be developed. So anyway, do you have anything else, or you were just getting the numbers?
I just want to make sure 51 for single, 12.4 for townhouses,
Correct?
13.7 for garden apartments,
Correct.
and then we don't know the mid-rut.
12.6 if with their numbers added.
Well, because if you add those 3 up to begin with, you come up with about 75%. So would that be 25%? 75 or 76.1%, I believe.
I'd have to look to see what I'm missing then.
That's all I want. I was just kind of, and that's what I was wondering. I was wondering if there were another style.
No.
I'm at 92.3.
Yeah, there might be. I was doing them here quick, so I must have keyed something in wrong. I apologize.
Okay, I just want to make sure what's,
No, those are the 4
okay,
unit types. One of those numbers must be off.
okay.
Yeah, I'll go through and get you the hard numbers. It looks like there's a total of 1,113 units all told. It's on the map in front of you, Mike, so.
Yep.
So one of the things that you said is that there's currently like close to 30% that's parkland.
Correct.
What exactly is considered to be parkland?
Anything owned by the HOA or the town.
Okay. Green belts, the play areas, the ponds, all those.
You got it. And then the golf course,
Golf course.
Riverbend Park. Those are the 2 main town facilities. There had been additional park land, although I don't know that it was actually inside I'm not 100% certain, going back and reading the minutes, whether it was in the southwestern or eastern portion of stage 2 that they sold. But sometime in the past, I only know about it because when we were looking up, when I was researching Martin Road Park to see if the southern portion of the land donated was considered parkland, which it was, basically, when I found the original thing, they were using that as mitigation for parkland alienation of what was essentially going to be the front 9 of the golf course. So that was originally part of from what I could tell, again, it didn't go into a ton of specifics on what was being sold in Riverton, but they basically sold a bunch of parkland in Riverton to a developer, used that money to acquire the parkland on Martin Road. And so again, if you look at the original plans, I don't have those here. I have the plans for phase 2. I just don't have them for phase 1. For phase 2, again, where this parcel is and all the homes south of it was originally supposed to be the golf course and apartments. And the golf course was going to actually be like a torus, a donut. And there were going to be apartments both inside and outside of it. Interestingly enough, they were also going to get rid of Moore Road. And because the golf course was going to go right through the middle of Moore Road. So like I said, that's some of what I've found. Obviously, I'll have this at the public hearing. I'll get the numbers updated, make sure I've got the correct numbers. I'm waiting for the update I pointed out a couple of things he needed to correct. So when we get that from Passero, I'll attach the updated number. The other thing that Passero said on Friday was that they do not expect to be ready for this week's meeting. So we will have a public hearing, hear any additional comment from anybody who showed up, but we will then again keep the meeting open, the public hearing open until the following meeting in October.
Okay.
Which would be the earliest. We don't have enough, so now let's dig into seeker. This is what they're not ready for yet, the seeker.
So they're not ready to speak at all, or what are they not ready for?
Because they're not ready to speak with regards to the seeker stuff. So they're not intending to be present.
Oh.
But again, I know there's a bunch of residents, how many will show up and wish to talk. They're working on gathering petitions. And trying to do so in a COVID-safe manner. So
I might suggest, instead of just telling them that we're going to have the next public hearing in early October, we wait until we get the information and close the public hearing and then reopen it when we actually get it. Because
I will tell you, Don, that there will be people who will panic if they see that the public hearing's been closed.
I just hate to have a public hearing every meeting when we don't have the information before us to discuss.
Well, again, we will have some new information to discuss, and we will have a bunch of residents who wish to give some of what they found. So like they've been going through the Democrat and Chronicle articles and a bunch of other stuff, and, you know, again, putting stuff in. So when I look at it, one of the things that we know is an issue is traffic. Traffic's a problem on that intersection today, and adding 120 units, in my opinion, will create a significant adverse impact. That I think is borne out in the traffic study, at least from the quick scan I gave of it. I believe that's borne out some in the testimony of our consultant. So like I said, one of the things that comes up then is, so what can they do about it? If Monroe County allows them, they could put in a traffic light at the intersection of Scottsville West Henrietta Road and East River Road. That would obviously fix the issue of the long wait of people trying to turn left onto East River Road. Whether the county wants them to do that, whether they're willing to do that, those are a bunch of the unknowns. So they also received the comments from our consultant, Terry Rice, on their traffic study, and they weren't going to be ready to have responses. A couple other potential adverse conditions. One is character of neighborhood. That's what all the homes to the south are talking about. And then there is the one potentially on open space. You know, the argument is that this is the last large open space. I don't know how that, from a seeker standpoint, what that talks about, whether it's potentially adverse, significant adverse impact. The school parcel would remain undeveloped, but obviously in theory, at some point, that could become developed. But then again, so could this in theory. I don't know whether, I've not seen any indication that there is a specific habitat that's being threatened. It's more there's a portion of seeker that talks about just general wildlife in the area. With that said, there is, how many acres? Oh, actually, I have that number. The golf course, park, and 4 of the lakes currently occupy 123 acres of open space. So there is currently a lot of open space, but in terms of what I'll call a wild corridor along the road there, this is it. Parcel E is it. So otherwise you're talking, it's more like green belts or, you know, long, narrow parks. But that's basically what my research has found. And again, we'll be talking about this at the public hearing and getting feedback from residents. Any other questions on that? Anything else you want me to, besides update the numbers, anything, other piece of information do you want me to see if I can find before Wednesday?
I think I asked a question about what the spillage was that was noted that was within 2,000 square feet of this
Yeah,
development, and I think they're gonna have the answer for that.
they will. I'll see if they've got it currently. If not, then they would have it in 2 meetings.
Okay.
Making a note to myself. Okay. So like I said, that one is one that is meeting strong resistance from the neighborhood. As you could imagine, it's a significant local impact.
Yeah. It does. Do you plan to share the letters and responses from the community that you've received with the board?
Yeah, I think I forwarded the specific letters on that we've gotten the letters. I've gotten a bunch of people who are asking on how to put together their, in other words, they told me they're going about doing petitions. They asked what form they should be in. So I've helped them with that in terms of just said, here's the form, you know, they've asked like, what do I need to check people's ID or, you know, just that type of stuff. I said, no, we pretty much need their signature, their address and the date. And then they asked, you know, what should I put on there? And I said, well, you should put on there what you think, why you think this shouldn't be there, you know, so that they can potentially sign their name below saying, we also don't think this, in other words, we believe the same thing, that this development shouldn't go through for these reasons. I encourage them to get rid of reasons that we're not allowed to judge by, because that gets people frustrated that we all said this, and I'm like, well, we can't use that as a criteria. And I unfortunately can't think of one off the top of my head, but there were a couple of them that I said, no, that's not a criteria by which we can judge this.
For instance, when they said they were told by the builder that it was forever wild.
Correct.
Right.
That's a perfect example. We can't judge that. Right. So judge the application based on that. So you know, largely they're looking at the seeker stuff, because as far as they could, I guess, express the opinion that they don't feel it matches the plans. Mike, by the way, speaking of which, could you send that down? I don't think Millie said it. Did I? Oh, did you
Yeah,
see it?
I-
Okay,
yeah,
never mind. She
I got
did see it.
it first.
Sorry. Couldn't remember which way it went. So anyway, like I said, to me, that's whether it matches is really more of we got a bunch of numbers from the public hearings to create the original PUD in the first place.
Right.
But the other stuff, character of neighborhood, those kinds of things, a lot of the seeker things are, that's more of what they essentially should be taking a look at. Okay. Speaking of controversial developments, number 3, the article, so there was an Article 78 lawsuit filed against the Forest View subdivision. So that was against the landowner, the developer, the town, and the planning board. I think are all the defendants named. So one of the things is we talked about previously, whereas we do have an interest in defending our actions, that we did our calculations correctly. Now, obviously, if we found we didn't, we would say so, but everything we've looked at says we did it properly. And then obviously we don't, one of the things that they are asking for in the lawsuit is that the town, that the parties being sued cover their legal fees. The town, we have an interest in protecting taxpayer dollars to not pay those legal fees. At the same time, we don't have a vested interest in whether this development does or does not go through. And so in that respect, it does not make sense to me to spend a bunch of taxpayer dollars defending the development. That should be up to the developer to do. So they have hired an attorney, Woods Oviatt. So rather than us spend additional legal fees, it seems to me we will present our, what are they called again, Don? It's a term I've never heard before.
Return, that's what Dan called it.
Yeah.
I call it the record.
Right. So the record or returns is what our planning board, Dan Mistrella, referred to it as. It basically says, here's the way we did the calculation, here's the way we applied the law, et cetera, and so forth. But it's then going to be their job to fight in court. For that to happen, for them to represent us so that we don't default and therefore then become potentially liable for any legal fees, we need to authorize Woods Oviatt to defend the town. So that's what that resolution is about. Any questions on that?
We're not spending any money on this?
We are not spending money on it. Nope. All the developer and landowner are covering all the fees for Woods Oviatt. And it expressly states in the resolution that this is being provided at no cost to the town.
Good, thank you.
So number 4, when we did the multifamily rezoning to basically control where multifamily developments occurred, as part of the comprehensive land use plan update, we were pulling multifamily out of a bunch of zoning districts as an allowed use, for instance, industrial being the most notable one. But there were already a bunch of apartment complexes built there when it was allowed. Now, one of the things that happens is if you pull it out and they become a pre-existing non-conforming condition, then they are limited, very limited on what they can do in terms of updating. And so we didn't want to create that situation, because then you have these apartments that could essentially fall into, I don't want to say ruin, but they could become more run down because they are unable to modernize and due to the limitations of being a pre-existing non-conforming. So we, as a board, if you remember, now this is Mike and Rob and Rick and Scott, but what we made the decision to do was to take those units and rezone them to R215 so that they were no longer pre-existing non-conforming. Unfortunately, when we did that, we missed that 5 or 6 of those apartment complexes were in an area that was not losing multifamily. And so we never should have pulled them out. And so all this would do is essentially restore them to their original zoning. So
Just a correction.
what's that?
Basically just a correction.
Just a correction, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So Chris's team is going to provide the updated map, and it's essentially just going back to what the zone originally looked like. And then we got the original text from Walt and Don, and we're just going to basically write the local law that reverts those districts back to their original zoning. 5 is basically just a maintenance agreement for the public library. Linda's been going through a bunch of those in terms of when we look at the different agreements, the prices were similar. We chose to go with Schindler because they're the ones who installed the elevator to begin with. Got a service agreement for security at Henrietta Town Court that is in the budget. I'm just, again, these aren't, no one indicated that there was a extended talk, so I'm just going through these. We'll talk about them more at the meeting. Okay. If you have something you wanted to talk to, we can, or you can wait and do it Wednesday. The letter of credit for Foxfield subdivision, section 2. So again, Chris and his team went and put that together. So because those, the roads and utilities are going to be dedicated to the town, it requires town board approval. Number 8 is the additional professional services for the landscape architects. And this was basically to, when we decided to add the Pooh Bridge and the pond underneath, this was the additional cost to do that design work. Chris and I pushed back on the McCord Landscape, asking them if they could bring the cost down, and they were willing to bring the cost down 20%. So
Thanks.
that so that's reflected on the bill. So again, big thanks to Doug McCord and his team for helping save taxpayer costs on that. Any questions on that one? If you haven't seen it, the bridge is being built. So you might want to swing over to the library. Sidewalks. Well,
Saw
the
a
pond
couple
liner.
guys in the hole.
Yeah.
In the hole today when I came through.
So the liner should be going down. Do we have a schedule?
Probably Tuesday or Wednesday.
probably Tuesday or Wednesday, according to Chris Martin. Number 9 is surplus material. Chuck, someone asked a question, why we selected Tightsworth auction. All right.
Company we've done business with for, well, all the time I've been here. It's convenient. They're right across the county's facilities right across the river from us. So.
Gotcha. Okay, I just didn't know. No, I couldn't, if you'd asked me who we used to auction the last time we did this, I wouldn't have been able to answer that. So figured I would ask you. Thank
We
you.
haven't had much to go to auction the last couple of years because of equipment that was delayed being delivered on off auction months. So this is the first time in probably 2 years we've sent anything to public auctions. So.
Gotcha. And then we'll also have the Chuck will also has a thing for the senior center van. So again, no one asked for that one detail, so we'll just go over that on Wednesday. I just wanted to give a little update on updating the not to exceed value on the IT infrastructure purchase. So if you remember back in, it was March timeframe, it was early spring, we had approved essentially a large chunk of change to upgrade the IT infrastructure. Some of it was hardware off of the state contract, and there was a roughly $20K worth of stuff that was not on state contract, and essentially we went out and got the required 3 quotes. The winning quote, that's what we based our not to exceed number on. When we actually went to obtain the software licenses, the company said, oh, we quoted the wrong licenses. Here's the correct licenses.
Oh, boy.
They're more expensive. So we went back out, got to the original other 2 companies, asked them to update their quotes. The company that originally had the quote for the software license was no longer the lowest bid. So what we will be doing is essentially rescinding their awarding of that portion of the contract and assigning it to the new company that's lower. However, then it was one of those too good to be true. We remember when it came in, we were like, wow, they were significantly less than everybody else.
Right.
Well, now we know why, because they quoted us the wrong licenses. So they had the right description, but when you looked at again, when they showed us the part number, they had the wrong part number. So anyway, that will increase the not to exceed value on the original contract. Any questions on that? In some ways, I'm kind of glad they weren't the lowest bid because I don't mind seeing the business taken away. To me, that's the thing I know drives Mike crazy is when someone comes in and says, here's the price, and then when you actually go to do it, oh, by the way, it's changed. Or, here's what our plans were, and look how wonderful it is. Oh, by the way, we're going to do it differently.
Well, they deserve to lose the business. They screwed it up.
Yep. The rest of them are pretty, I'll call routine. We've got the approving the adopting the standard workday and reporting resolution. So that's from Becky. Again, if you have any questions on that, we can do that Wednesday. The Board of Assessment review appointments are due, or the terms end this month. So we're going to be doing the appointments at this meeting. We have a significant donation to the Henrietta Public Library. They were very appreciative of all that the library has done, especially in time of this COVID, and they made a donation. Then we have budget transfers and adjustments. We will be approving the 2021 Recreation Center wage scale. It's changing because, of course, minimum wage is going up. And then there's some additional personnel items. And finally, Mike's second meeting of bills payable. Any other questions, comments? I did get an update on a previous discussion item at executive session, so I would like to move to executive session when we're all done here. It shouldn't be for very long. I just wanted to give you an update.
Okay.
It's, sorry, Becky, it came up at around, I don't know, sometime this afternoon. It's again, like the last ones, it's on subjects specific to certain employment, or however that goes, employment of a specific individual. Becky?
I'm here. I got it. I can roll with it. It's
Okay,
cool.
thanks. Any other items, any other discussion before we move to executive session?
Nope.
Chris, did you have something in particular, or was your camera just having problems? We appreciate it. His camera was having problems, so he graced us, and that was air quotes, with our presence. Okay, can I get a motion to move to executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Hearing no objection, we will move to executive session. Since we will adjourn straight from executive session, we can end the live stream at this point. Thank you very much. I will see you Wednesday.